source, you notice on the very polar opposite end, we have Malkuth, which is the physical plane, right? The material plane. That's the polar opposite of the source. So the further away, the less direct influence you have over that. So while, yes, everything up under that tree is God, everything in this tree is one thing, but there's a hierarchy involved. Just like when you go to work, the basic unskilled labor employee doesn't have much of a say in anything. He comes to work, you got to do what you're told, and you go home. All right. You might get your paycheck. You might get a whole chunk of it sliced out for this, that, and the third. And you definitely don't have any effect on the rules. Whereas a person that's closer up the food chain to the source of the people who originated that business, they have a lot more say and more pull in what goes on, right? Also, like the stakeholders and people who own stock in the company, they have more say on what happens with the company because they're closer to the source. Likewise, in real life, in the material plane in general, most people are very far away from the source. So mentally, they find themselves, spiritually also, they find themselves on autopilot, right? They find themselves moving in such a way that is just going with the flow, as we say, right? There's a flow. There's a flow in nature. Just like you see in this tree, and just like Oldfield talks about, and all the Vedic texts talk about as well, as far as this hierarchy of energy, the flow goes downward, right? So we have the origin of manifestation, which is Kether, and the source energy pushes out, right? Pushes out to the left and the right. And that's what we have here in the stasis of Chokmah, the bursting forth of that energy, bursts forth out, right? And it continues down this path, 777, lightning bolt path, all the way down. And it reaches different stages as it travels, right? So the more that it condenses, the more that it solidifies, the more that it is pulled downward, the more dense it gets, the more physical it gets. So it goes from free-flowing, undifferentiated energy to very compact, compressed, and specific energy, right? Energy, matter and energy are one and the same, but we understand that there's different states of matter, right? That's what this whole science is all about, the different states of matter. So when we talk about the 5 elements or the 5 tattvas, those are the 5 states of matter, and they can be attributed to earth, water, fire, air, ether, Om, right? The ultimate vibration of all reality. And then finally, this would be attributed to what we call Buddhi, what we call the higher intellect, the highest intellect, right? The highest point that you can reach with your individual consciousness before you become separated into God itself. But to even get up to this upper triad, you've got to completely release what you are holding on to as your personal self, right? Because ego is down here. This is the last step that you get to. Oh, technically it's here with this barrier of Doth. You can't cross this line with your ego. And it's not like a rule, oh, you can't come past here with your ego, but the only way to realize these upper levels is for the ego to dissolve, right? For it to dissolve. Now, if you haven't watched my channel before, and if you haven't read any of these books that I've talked about, then when I say ego, it's not the same thing that you understand as ego. I'm not talking about pride or, you thinking that you're some celebrity. When I say ego, I'm speaking of the concept that you are an individual creature in creation, that you're something separate from everything else, right? Now, you can research more into that in several books that I've mentioned, so you don't have to debate me about it, all right? I'm not making this shit up. But I said all that to say the closer you are to the source of this thing, and even, it's not like you've got to be way up here with your consciousness. You can just be slightly above autopilot. Because notice how Malkuth is landlocked, right? This is a perfect diagram. But notice how the sphere of Malkuth, it's embedded within the bedrock of the physical plane, locked into these mountains, physical incarnation. So once we get to this point of solidity, once we get to this point of concrete manifestation, there isn't much change. You're not going to change a mountain, not easily, right? You're not going to change the structure and pattern of your life, not easily. It's going to take effort. It's going to take higher effort. In order, A lot of us try to change our life by physical means, and we find it to be very difficult. It's very difficult to keep up that work, right? Because we only have a limited amount of physical energy. So in order to really change your life the way that God would change things, you've got to employ a higher rate of energy, a higher rate of vibration. It can't be this slow, low, dense vibratory rate. You know what I'm saying? So we want to go upward. And each one of these are states of consciousness. They're not places. You're not going to travel to Chesed. It's a state of awareness and understanding of how the world works. So this plane here, known as Yesod, can represent the etheric body or the etheric plane. And the further up we go, we find that these upper planes are prototypes of the planes that come afterward. So what happens in this state of awareness, this state of conscious, this etheric plane, we find that there is a prototype of what we find in the physical plane. All this contains a prototype. In other words, when you close your eyes and you daydream about that car that you want to get, right? That nice car, you download pictures of it, you watch videos, you read about it, you get a picture, you get that little 3D picture on the website where you can rotate the camera and you see what the wheel looks like and the windows and the buttons, and you visualize yourself there. You put yourself there. All that's happening in the etheric plane, right? All that's happening in the etheric plane. That's a very real thing. Don't discount or throw away the imagination. That's what they taught you to do in school. So hold on to your imagination, because you need that to change things down here and to move up forward, right? In order for Malkuth to go up, the easiest path is to go into Yesod, which is the etheric plane. So anyways, we find ourselves visualizing, right? You find yourself in the seat, you feel the leather on your ass, on your back, you feel the grip of that steering wheel, you picture the buttons, the texture as you press it on your phone, you envision the wind blowing through the window as you're driving, or matter of fact, the window's up and you just feel the smooth ride, no bumps, everything is just perfect. You visualize it, and you find that you make a plan to get there, right? Things start falling into place. You're saving money. You're finding new ways to do this, that, and the third. Basically, as time passes, you attract that visualization into manifestation, right? Now, that's a general idea, and some of you guys can say, yeah, that happened to me. But there are other things, many other things, everything that you have in life that you first visualized, right? I mean, for me, even this microphone, right? When I went to Full Sail University in Orlando, I took a class on microphones, and they taught me about all the fancy microphones, from most expensive to the cheapest, and what they do and the different types. And for some reason, the history of Blue microphones really stood out to me, right? I thought that Blue was such a great brand, and I wanted one. Even though they were kind of pricey, I wanted one. So I'd always visualize myself recording my music on a Blue microphone. I always knew that I'd have one. And around that time, they came out with this USB version. Now, the reason I bought it is because it doubles as a USB mic and an XLR mic, which means it can be digital and analog. So if I wanted the analog sound to have a better, to capture a natural frequency, I could do that. But if I just wanted to use a quick, plug it into my computer like right now, it can go digitally, right? Square wave. But anyways, I visualized myself using this microphone. I visualized myself with a ring light. I visualized myself with these KRK speakers because I used to be a big fan of Skrillex. And, when he wrote his album, Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites, he had a pair of KRK speakers and one of them blew out. So he had to record that whole album on one speaker. And I just thought, wow, those speakers must be so great, so high quality that he can produce such an amazing album off of one speaker. I got to have them. So I saved up my money. I visualized myself getting those speakers, and they were very expensive. But what happened was, there was like a holiday edition. They're usually black with a little yellow ring around them. I got the all white ones because they were like a Christmas edition. And I guess they found that people didn't like them. So they dropped the price on them, like more than 50%. So I snatched them up. I got myself two for the price of one, right? But I visualized it for years. I think from like 2011 to 2013 or so. I wanted a pair of those speakers. And, it happened. So all that to say, everything in my environment came from me spending time visualizing here, right? I don't struggle or stress out or say, oh, I'm never going to get this, because I know how to get things. I know how to get things, and you do too. It starts with this visualization and you bring it down. But anyways, what I'm saying is, or I could have just, you know, struggled by the sweat of my brow doing things blindly, manually. Now, that's not to say you can't get things from work. What I am saying is, with that added layer of visualization, you attract opportunities to you. You attract opportunities when you visualize what you want. Okay. So I hope that I hope that was kind of clear. But anyways, what the point I'm saying is, what Ophio talked about is, the nearer to the source you are, the less you have to use extra stuff. Now, what I just said that story for was that the sphere of Yesod isn't very close to Kether in relation to all the other spheres, but it's closer than Malkuth is. So even with little bitty fantasy and fantasizing, even with just that, I'm able to change my life. Imagine what we could do if we really projected ourselves and we're working from a higher level, right? So that's why I choose to study and teach about Kabbalah, because this helps you to grasp something that is ungraspable. This adds structure to chaos, all right? It's not a religion. It's a science. It's a science because it shows you a step-by-step way to do things. It shows you a structure, it shows you a pattern and a pathway. You don't have to believe in anything. You test it out. You test it out. It's not just a theory. It's a theory that you put into practice and see if it works.